Hello, everybody, and a big happy new year to you. I am starting this year with something a little bit different. I'm starting this year with my most beautiful, my most treasured, my most dear friend, Fiona. That's her right there. And I am going to talk to her about Bitcoin. And she's heard me talk about Bitcoin over the years. I shouldn't say that, over the months, over the last few months, over maybe the last year and a half, yeah?
Yeah.
And she's sort of vaguely interested as much as you can be about somebody else's hobby and passion. But she had a really interesting conversation yesterday with a couple of pest controllers who came out to her house who ended up talking about Bitcoin, right? And
Yeah.
And I was really interested in what came out of that. And I thought it might be a really interesting experiment and discussion just to talk with Fiona, who's so brand new to Bitcoin, about what this is and what could be relevant for her. Why would she even consider? Why would you, darling, consider buying some Bitcoin given your personal circumstances? So this is, there's a phrase in the Bitcoin community called orange pilling. So the same way that there's the red pill and the blue pill in the Matrix, and I can't remember which way around it is, but the red pill wakes them up, yeah? So orange pilling is about kind of waking people up to the dubiousness of the current fiat system, the currency as we know it, cash as we know it, and helping people to understand the value proposition, for want of a better word, for Bitcoin, yeah? So that's going to be this discussion, and you're gonna throw the hard questions at me, right? Because you got no problem throwing hard questions. No.
And I've got no idea what you're talking about. So
I don't know what she said so far.
like I do now so far, but it's just a brand new world for me. Totally new language, totally new concept. So so I'm willing to learn about that in this discussion, I'm hoping.
Beautiful. And I love that you're open to it, because a lot of people aren't. And a lot of people will poo-poo it before they've heard anything about it. So that's where we're going to go. So I'm going to start by asking you, what happened with the pest controllers yesterday, and why did you have a pest problem in the first place?
Okay, right. So this is a father and a son, and they're absolutely delightful. So they've come to my home numerous times to deal with ants and other things, and so I've got some outdoor furniture. It's got cushions, and it's got these little white things on cushions. Now, you're not going to learn about what they are now because I've forgotten, but I thought the cushions were infested. So I was going to buy some new ones. I thought, actually, I'll grab those guys first, see what they say. And they said they're just tiny little things that live on surfaces and plants, nothing to worry about. Your cushions are not infested, just wipe them off. Great, I've saved myself a bit of money right there. So they're in my back garden, and the son, I think, is about 23.
I think these little guys are on my roses. I've seen these guys.
Yeah, that's what
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. So he said that. He said, he called them a name, and he said, any plant, you'll see them on the plant. So that made sense to me. So you just confirmed that. So they're really, really lovely people. And the son's about 23. He's very mature, and they run this business together beautifully. And they obviously work together all the time. And the son's married, the father's still married, married. And
Married
I've got
at 23.
Yeah, I know.
So mature these days, right?
I know. And he
How
told
different
me,
are they? Are they from our generation?
well, I said to him that my daughter had just broken up with her partner, which I'm sure she won't mind me saying, to see what the world would be like without being in a relationship at 21, just to experience being at uni on her own. And this young man, I said that to him, and he said, yeah, my girlfriend and I thought that at the time, and we realized life was better with each other than without each other. So they got married, and she's a beautiful girl. I've seen her in the shop that she works in. So they're lovely, right? And so they're on my back deck in my garden, and I don't know how it came to be. I really don't, but they started talking about Bitcoin, and the father is absolutely for it, and the son is absolutely against it. And so I found myself in the middle of this kind of discussion, and it was a discussion. And what I noticed was the son's rationale was that, and this is, so again, I don't know, right? And this is what you're going to obviously teach me about. So I don't know enough about it, but I was surprised at how much I've picked up from our conversations, because I do listen, and how much it's gone in without me, without me knowing. So he said, the father said, that he'd been talking to a tax person. Now, again, this is all just sort of me in the flurry of thinking, am I actually having this conversation at all about Bitcoin? What's going on here? Wasn't planning on this, as the pesticide guys are in my house. But the father said that he'd been talking to a tax person, and the tax person said that they need to be informed about Bitcoin. And the father said that's absolute rubbish, because the whole point of Bitcoin is that we're out of the system. Right. So again, don't quote me 100%. This is my interpretation of what I heard. He may be listening to this. I'm sure he will at some point and think that's not what I said. So if I didn't get that correctly, don't hold it against me. This is my interpretation in a moment of unexpected discussion about Bitcoin being thrown left wing, really, left field. So he said that, and I said, no, that's right. That's what I understand about Bitcoin, is that it's about a currency that doesn't belong to a government. Again, I have no clue, right? I'm just making this up as I go from what I've heard. I think this is what I know. I said, and so it's about empowerment, and it's about people creating their own currency so they can decide how it works without being taxed exorbitantly from the government. And he was along with me on that. The son was then, on the other hand, saying, yeah, but I don't trust it because it's just the internet. What if the internet goes down? Then you have no currency. I said, well, what if the world blows up? You've got no currency now. It's all back. Like, what about the banks that have gone bankrupt in other countries from such an economic crisis that they have no money? Everything gets frozen. It's the same thing. So I was in between this, and the father's going, yeah, that's right. I said, so, and then the son's going, yeah. So, and then I said, well, my girlfriend, Carrie, is very much in the Bitcoin community. She goes to the Miami conference, and so then the father started naming people to me that you would know, Carrie. And I was just like, probably, I don't know. And so he said, and I said, and I think she's going to do a podcast on talking to a newbie like me about it. And they were so keen to watch it. But it was interesting because the son was really keen to watch it. So I wonder how much he might learn from this and how much he might not know about it. But he seemed to have some really good ideas about it. Then I talked about knowing of someone who's about to mortgage their house to buy Bitcoin, because the father was saying Bitcoin is cheap. One Bitcoin is 28 or something. I don't know. This is
Australian dollars. Yeah, it's about 16 and a half, 17 grand US dollars at the moment. Yep.
The 28 grand Australian dollars. Yep. So he wants to get in now because it's cheap. And then the son's going, there is no way. I like bricks and mortar. There is no way I'm going to ever sell my house or do anything like that. And the father's talking about longevity. He said he may not even in his lifetime see the absolute results that it may bring about, but he knows already that he's possibly made money, or he knows of people. So this was this kind of conversation, and I was just, but the thing that I was really amused by, or quite surprised in myself by, was my understanding of it, and feeling that whole tax thing, and feeling that whole government run big brother thing. And I felt the heaviness of that. And that's what the father, I think, was talking about, was moving away from that. And so when they left, I just sat there going, well, I just had a whole conversation, and I felt like I was more for the Bitcoin, minute amount of information I have, than I was for the son, who is lovely. And I hear what he's saying. And that made me want to know more then. At that point, I thought, I really want to probe this. I've got the most ideal person, Carrie, to teach me and tell me what I just absolutely don't know. So that was the story of the guys yesterday. It was just very interesting.
Can I ask a couple of things? So my first question is, so I'm hearing what the son's concern is, and I've mentally noted that in terms of bricks and mortar in particular. So we'll circle back round to that. Tell me
and the internet going down.
And the internet going down. Absolutely valid. So let's come back to that as well. Can I ask why the father was, can we give them names, or should we not go there? I'll just call him the father.
Let's call them John and Jeff. John's the
John and
father,
Jeff.
Jeff's the son. That's what their names. John and
Good.
Jeff works.
So,
How's that
John,
for
why was John
improvisation?
pro Bitcoin? So you're saying there's some sort of tax thing he's interested in. There's something about freedom from government, getting out of the system that he's interested in. Why did he seem to care about that from what you could understand from that conversation?
Okay, my sense of it was just a sheer sense of empowerment and
Yeah,
getting
right.
out of a system
Okay.
and getting out of a controlling system that where we have no say. And he talked about, is it there's a South American country that only has Bitcoin as their
El
currency.
Salvador has made it
El
legal tender.
Salvador.
And it's not only that, it's not that they are only using Bitcoin, it's just that it's legal tender. So everyone has to be able to take Bitcoin as well as US dollars. They can convert it immediately for US dollars, but they have to, as a merchant, like if I own a store, Bitcoin is legal tender. They have to take it if someone's offering it. Yeah.
Okay, so that was the thing that I think he was basing it on, is that, again, because of my lack of understanding, it was difficult to read between the lines and actually truly understand. But he seemed so quietly confident in his resolve around it, and the fact that it's a sense of empowerment and a sense of not being run by government, but it being the people's choice. I vaguely recall him sort of talking a little bit about. So, and I'm not sure what that looks like, but I just kind of heard him. And it was just, and in the end, the father was very fatherly and said, okay, well, once again, we're going to have to agree to disagree. And then they just moved on, and then they left, and it was just, obviously this is a conversation they have. And I said, obviously there's a bit of conflict, you guys. And they said, no, it's just great conversation, and we talk about it, we're both open. And they were really open. Just random that it happened on my back deck as I'm talking about my cushions, whether I should buy new ones.
And those damn little white bugs. Okay. So and then let me understand a little bit more about what you understand about this and why you're curious about it. So you've heard that conversation, you've acknowledged within yourself, oh, that's interesting. I'm kind of seem to be more on the father side than the son side, right? And that must be something to do with the way Carrie's been carrying on at me for several months now.
That's for sure. Yeah.
So I picked something up, and I'm clearly pro Bitcoin at some level. Why do you think you are?
Because as you've talked through the time, it's been a couple of years, I think, a year and a half, and you're so eloquent about it. But what I find is that my brain, and I suggest that this might happen for others, literally just shuts down because I don't understand. And I almost need to know from beginning to end. Like when this son said, I don't know if it's Joe or Jeff or John and Jeff, but when the son said about the internet, and then he said about gold, that's right, he also said about gold and how, yeah, at the end of the day, everything could go to, can I swear vaguely? Can I swear?
Gently.
Everything could go to shit, and yet there's always gold, and you can measure gold. And I said, but that's the measure we put on it. That's what we say. Otherwise, why haven't we got other minerals that we put the same amount of worth onto it? Again, I don't know what I'm talking about, so I hope I don't look really stupid, but I just thought gold is what we say it is. Gold is what we give it. We say it's worth this much because it's rare, because it's obscure. I don't know. But why can't we do that then for a piece of rock that you find in the middle of Cuba or something? So I just said that's just what humans have given it. So you're still talking about something that humans have done. You're acting like that gold is somehow more valid than something on the internet, and the internet might crash and it's all gone. Same with the bank, the economy might crash, that all the money's gone. It's not, for me, it didn't feel any different. And his argument didn't win me over at all, because I thought, if your internet goes down, you've got a lot more to worry about than just your money in your bank, like the economy. If the economy crashes, there's a lot more to worry about than just the money that's in your bank. There's poverty, there's homelessness, there's all sorts of other things. So if the internet, which is what he was basing it on, was the internet will crash and then there's no money. I don't know what he means by that. But he seemed to think that Bitcoin sits within the system of internet, and if the internet no longer exists, then the money no longer exists, or something, or the currency rather than the money, the currency. And I just didn't buy that argument. And that's the point I got involved, really involved, and said gold is just what we attribute to it in terms of worth and meaningfulness. And the internet, if the internet crashes after all these years, we've got a lot of other issues to be considering. So I didn't feel like Bitcoin was reliant on internet, and then therefore it's rocky because the internet might crash and then we're all screwed, if you like, for want of a better word.
Yeah, absolutely. And the internet, if you remember, was built originally by, it came out of, as far as I understand it, defense forces. And how do we create a decentralized form of kind of communication so that we aren't reliant on one central kind of source, and if that goes out, if that gets bombed, you know, we're stuffed, whereas the internet will always kind of pick up. And Bitcoin and blockchain is based very much on that same idea. Yeah, so it's about decentralization and there's no central point. So so from the point of view, I mean, if internet's down, you're absolutely right, spot on. We got bigger problems. Yeah. And if it's down because of some, what's that, electronic pulse, magnetic pulse, you know, if it's something like that, then, you know, we're stuffed in a really big way. And we're all back to freaking living like tribally and just working out, we've just got to go and fish and hope to God that our fish aren't infected, you know? So
and putting cash under our mattresses like we used to in the old days.
Well, yeah, that's right. You're absolutely right. There's cash under the mattress. So there's the kind of banking side of it. Like, is our bank any more safe than keeping our money under our mattress? So there's that. And what's the money in the bank worth? So there's so many questions that have come out of what you've just said. And I love what you've picked up along the way, because you're amazing. Like I just, you and my friend, like I've got two groups of friends these days, because I lost all my friends through COVID who like when I would question about COVID, they would sort of pile on. So, but what I love about in my two groups of friends these days are either kind of pro Bitcoin or they're open. And I love that you're open about it. And so what I might try and do is maybe start from basics about what it is and then try and answer Jeff's questions along the way. Yeah. And I think
what I might try and do
yeah.
is try and stay focused and hear it, because I just don't want to do the vaguing out when it all gets more than my brain can sort of tolerate. So I want to just go, and I will just call it when I need it to slow down and go, I don't know what you mean by that. So if you're happy for me to really drill down when I need to, so that I don't do the vaguing out, which is what's happened before. I hear it, but I just disconnect from it because it doesn't make sense to me, and I don't connect to it, obviously from a self-centered personal point of view, like how does this serve me, sort of thing. But that's not the question.
But that's
I want
what
you to
most
answer.
people care about, is how does it serve me? And I think it's really valuable that you ask that, because people in polite conversation at a party won't. And so if you do, then how do people get this information, right? And so I'm really intrigued by, I was watching a debate earlier today online, YouTube, and it was between a Bitcoiner and a non-Bitcoiner. And to be honest, for all my love of Bitcoin, I felt the non-Bitcoiner won that debate.
Right.
Because what I think we do very, very poorly in the Bitcoin community is bring people on board effectively. And I think it's because we aren't willing to get down into very, like, into the syntax of what does it mean for you, Fiona, right? So we're all up here in this macroeconomic kind of area, right? And that's where I'm going to start our discussion. But then we've got to get down into, well, so what, you know? So what? What is this?
And the truth about the risks. I think that's one of the things that the son was talking about, was the risk and I know that I get that from a distance from things you hear about things crashing. But I said, well, I don't know if the risks are any more or less than the stock market, where you put money on shares and you might lose, you might win. It's just how much of a risk are you willing to take? So I suppose part of that conversation might include the risks are, which there's risks with anything to do with money. You buy a house, it might fall down on your head. There's a risk. You've just spent a shit ton of money. Your house isn't what you thought it was. You're going to get structurally sound information or advice, but other things might happen. So everything is a risk. And I wonder about the Bitcoin community and whether they, and this is me just so far off my own thoughts, but do people who believe in Bitcoin omit some of that risk, or do you talk about it honestly as a community and address it as if it was shares that you were putting your money into?
100%. Okay. Really, really valid. I will say that the NASDAQ is down as far. So that's the tech stocks in the US is down as much as Bitcoin. So all things tech, basically Bitcoin has been following the S&P, or well, particularly the NASDAQ, the tech stock. So it's just considered by the markets as another technology. Yeah. So it's being placed in the same basket in terms of risks and rewards. So that's a valid point as well. So I don't know that I've mentally kept track of all the questions that have come up along the way. Let me try and kind of I'm gonna do my best to explain what the use case is today and what the use case could be in the future. And let's try and come back, if you can remember some of those questions from Jeff, and from yourself, and as we go. Yeah.
Sounds great.
All right. Okay. Here we go. So all right, so the way I've been thinking about this recently, and one of the things that I get frustrated about in the Bitcoin community is this thing of, I don't think we convey it well. Overall, there's some people who are exceptional at it, but okay, so the way I'm going to break it down is this. I'm going to create a pyramid. And in this pyramid at the base, and it's going to be a wealth pyramid. So at the base are the people in the poorest countries and the most authoritarian countries. Yeah. And what's the use case for them? And then I'm going to move up into the Western civilization, which are fundamentally the safest and the wealthiest countries. But I'm going to start at the poorer end of those. Yeah, those people. Are you vaguing out yet?
No, I just want you to tell me what use case means.
Oh, use case simply means like, how's it useful?
Got
how's
you.
it useful?
Okay.
So how's it useful to people at the poorest people in the planet, on the planet? How's it useful to the poorest people in Western civilization, which is the rich end of poor, right?
Yeah.
And then how's it relevant for potentially the top end, if at all? Yeah. Because that's how I think it's going to be taken up. Right, because at the moment, what you've got is people in El Salvador and Nigeria, and like here, they're getting it. Venezuela and Sri Lanka and, you know, Lebanon, like down here, Turkey, people are getting it because they understand why it's useful.
Okay.
Then you've got people at this level, kind of middle and working class in Western civilization, and then you've got this kind of pointy end, right?
Yeah.
Is that good?
That makes sense.
Good
I'm right with you, 100%.
Okay. So now I'm gonna start with kind of the countries that I'm gonna say have been actually, I mean, once you get down to it, let's not get into the reasons why they are as poor as they are. There are reasons, and a lot of it has to do with the International Monetary Fund and the World Economic Forum, but let's not go there. So the point is that I'm going to put them in two categories, the people at this kind of at the poorest level of the world. And the two categories are this, authoritarian countries and runaway inflation countries. Yeah? Okay.
Yeah.
So the authoritarian countries, so they want to be able to get out. They want some financial freedom so that their money can't be taken away from them, right? So with Bitcoin, they can receive it on their phone. It doesn't have to go via a bank. So one of the big problems for some countries is, first of all, there's a huge number of people who are unbanked, who simply don't have a bank account. So how do you get money to them? Like, they go and work, they get money from work, but if I want to send it to them from overseas, I can't, like, I can't get it through to them. I've got to send it to a bank. They haven't got a bank account, or even if they do, there can often be like thugs at the door saying you've got to pay us before you can go in. So there's a whole lot of reasons why people can't get money in authoritarian countries, right? So one of the big things that I think is really important from a purely humanitarian point of view is families being able to get money to their parents, to their families, to their loved ones, without having to go via a third party, i.e. a bank. Yes, whether authoritarian or not, they're simply unbanked.
And that can be across the world. That
Across
doesn't
the
have to
world.
be okay.
So wherever someone is in the world and they haven't got a bank account, but their family wants to send the money, and I can't send cash in the mail because it's going to get, stolen by someone in the mail system somewhere. So you can, right? So here's my phone, which is broken, and I need a new one. But anyway, you can't see that but anyway, so you've got a phone, I've got a phone. You can send the Bitcoin straight to me, yeah? And it doesn't have to go via bank, and there's no fees, or there's bugger all fees, and that's it, right? So
and there's no tax, because sometimes when you send money, if it's above $50 or something, it's considered not a gift, and therefore you have to pay tax on it if you transfer money from one
I
country to
am
another.
so not across the whole tax implications of this, and we need to come back to that. I am just not in a good position to answer the tax questions. But either way, I've now got that in my account. I can go and trade it for whatever my local currency is, or dollars, US dollars. Someone will buy it. It's worth something to someone in the world. There's an agreed price across the world, yeah, on Bitcoin. And so I can go and exchange that, and I can now go and buy food with it, right? Is that fair? Like, I just didn't have to, so I just sent you money in Sri Lanka or somewhere. Is that comfortable?
100%. And I do have that in my mind, that if it's over a certain amount, you also, then when you send money, you have to pay tax on it. So you don't actually have to pay tax on it.
Yeah, that's right, because I've just received Bitcoin. I don't know the tax implications of once I change that out for USD, for US dollars, or for my currency, my personal currency, wherever that is, with a local exchange. But that's my wallet, and I'm putting that into my exchange. The government, why would the government know anything about that?
So that's what I like about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think that's different when it comes to Western countries, so we'll come back to that. Okay, so that's the use case, the usefulness to someone in an authority, or in a country, in any country where I'm unbanked, yeah, or where I just want to own my Bitcoin and I just don't want the government interfering or a bank interfering, and I just want to receive something from someone. Yeah. Okay, we're good with that.
Yep.
I need more feedback.
I'm with you. I'm with you 100%. Yeah.
All right. This is so
British.
This is so outside of our normal conversation, right? Okay.
I know.
So there's another group of people who also really suffer, and that's people in places like Venezuela, where they've had runaway inflation. Now, what happens there is, I want to go and buy some bread today with the money that I earned this week from my job, whatever it is, and now bread is double the price and milk is double the price that it was last week. But my wage hasn't gone up, but my groceries have doubled, right?
It's a bit like us at the moment.
What's that?
A bit like us in the situation we find ourselves in Australia at the moment, and in the UK.
Absolutely. And we will come back to that, because even though our inflation rate isn't kind of 50% a week, for years it was kind of 2% a year, so they said. They left out a lot of goods and services along the way in order to keep it down to 2%. But actually now these days it's like 7%, 15%. They record it as 7 or 8%, but actually it's closer to 15% if you bring into play things like housing and, you know, food and a whole bunch of things that they don't include in the consumer price index, right? Are you vaguing out? Are we?
No, I'm with you.
No,
I'm really
you're here.
interested.
Okay. So you've got to tell me, because I ran, and I know I ran. And this is why I'm really bad at this. And like, this is why I need to be pulled up, is because I get like all right, rah, and excited.
That's
And
what
then,
we love about you.
yeah.
Absolutely what I love about you. You couldn't be any other way. Otherwise it wouldn't strike me, it wouldn't hit me. It's perfect for the kind of person I am. So I love the way you are. So you rant
Oh,
away. And luckily I'm strong on the other end that can rant back or can ask questions or can stop because I want to understand. That's the point of this.
I love that you want to understand, and thank you. I love you. You're amazing. I'm so lucky.
Me
But
too.
anyway, let's come back to it. So if you've got runaway inflation, but frankly, even if you've just got Western country level inflation, that erodes your purchasing power. Yeah. So now I can't buy as much with my Venezuelan, whatever the currency is, right? I just can't buy as much food to feed my family as I could last week.
Mm.
So that's a big deal, and that doesn't feel like a big deal for people who are middle class and upper class in Western civilization, but it's a bloody big deal for people at the lower end. Yeah, and people are talking about it now. So okay, so that's this in the pyramid, and I don't want to spend too much time there, because a little bit like you said earlier, how does it affect me, Fiona? That doesn't matter to you at some level, and I get that, right? I could say buying Bitcoin is a little bit like supporting the network that's a form of charity to make a huge difference for that level of society, for the people who have been totally screwed over by the West and who are in this position as a result. I could base that argument, but you've got other charities that you care about. So that's not going to cut it for a lot of people. Okay, so let's move on. So now we move into exactly the point that you just brought up, which is, okay, but there's also inflation in the West, right? And not only is there inflation at, say, 7% a year if we're being conservative and leaving out all the important things. And the reason they under report inflation is that things like pensions are increased according to the consumer price index, the inflation level, right? So we've got to pretend it's only 7% or 2% or 5% or whatever, because we don't want to increase pensions more than that, right? So we leave out all the important things like the assets and the housing and the food and tampons and whatever, because somehow they don't count. And that way it keeps the CPI seemingly somehow manageable, and we only have to increase welfare by that amount. Yeah. Because it's CPI indexed, it's indexed to, it's increased according to the reported inflation rate, right? Okay, so that's why CPI is underreported. But the reality of CPI, not only is CPI say 7%, and okay, that's fluctuated and it's been as low as 2 or 1 or whatever, but the reality is twofold here, and I'm gonna look at two different points of view. One is that it compounds. One of the most powerful effects that are hugely misunderstood. So Warren Buffett said years ago something about, I'm not going to get the quote, but something about kind of the magic of money is in compounding, right? Like once you get compounding. So there's an old analogy that's used, which is like this Chinese king and some slave servant person goes, gives him some great solution to a problem that he had. And he says, I either want this amount of money or I want a grain of rice on each of the squares of a chessboard, right? So there's 64 squares on a chessboard, but I want it to double each day, right? So it goes 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64. Yeah, got it. Okay.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's just a little thing around. I hope this isn't condescending, but this is like, genuinely, I think a lot of people don't get this. At what point do we hit the 50% level if we're doubling every day? Any guesses? So over 64 days, where do we hit the 50% of the total level? And this is not to trick you, and this is not to call you out.
At the beginning? At the beginning?
At the beginning, we go from 1 to 2.
Start to introduce it?
From 1 to 2. So no, yeah, no, it's not. You're actually incredibly close in your thinking, funnily enough, because it's not at the halfway point. You're absolutely right. It's not at the halfway point. It's at the end. If we're doubling every day, then the halfway point from 100% to 50% was day 63, right? So if on day 63, I then double again, and I'm on 1 million by day 63, then on day 64, I'm 2 million.
So you've lost me now. I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay. So, all right, there's a reason I'm going here. So these numbers, so 1, 2, 4, 8, 32, 64, 128, 256, 512, I think we're up to, yeah, you're getting it, 1024. We're doubling until we get to, so it's like, that's what compounding is. It may not be at 100% a year. It may not be doubling each year, right?
Right, okay.
Right, but it's decreasing your purchasing power. So if at 2%, pretending that it's 2%, and it's not, even now they're saying 7%, and they're underestimating it. But in terms of your purchasing power, if you're earning $100,000 Australian dollars a year, I don't know what the average is in America, right? If you're earning 100,000 a year, right? And now we go on to year 2. It's like square 2 on the checkerboard, right? We go on to year 2. At 2%, I can only buy, I can only buy what used to be $98,000 worth of goods. Or another way to put it is, to buy the same goods, I have to spend a little over $102 to get the same goods last year, right?
And you're talking about that being more than what you earned last year, where you could have afforded it and now you can't, because what you paid for it last year within the realm of your wage, that's the products exceed the costing now for what you earn.
Spot on. Absolutely. Right? Encapsulated it. So now I haven't got the same purchasing power with money. It looks like I've got the same amount of money, right? But actually, in terms of what I can buy with it, is less. And then if you add to that the compounding of that over 40 years, let's say over the course of a working lifetime. So now I've saved money, right? And I've put away $100 a month. Yeah. So I've put away $1,200 a year, right?
Yeah.
But in terms of, I'm consistent with 1,200, right? But actually what that 1,200 buys, so now over 10 years, I've got $12,000. Over 40 years, I've got $48,000. So you go, oh, wow, $48,000. All I did was put away $100 a month, right?
Yeah.
Okay. But actually what's been happening with inflation at 2%, 5%, 7%, and that's just what they're reporting. That's not what it actually is. That 48,000 buys bugger all. You know, the same way when we used to like joke about, there's always those jokes about, oh, I remember when sweets, like I remember cobblers, those little, like the toffees with the chocolate around it. Did you have those? And they're like,
Mm,
get stuck in your
no.
teeth and they're a pain in the ass, right?
All toffees do though, yes.
Yeah, I know, right? So they're disastrous. But I remember when they were like 1 cent, right? And you could, but now, like nothing is like, how many things, like houses, right? Houses. We all go, oh, that's asset appreciation. That's a good thing. That's not inflation. That's inflation. That's why your kids who are in their 20s can't afford a house, and your parents could at their age, right?
Mm,
That's
mm,
why two parents have to work these days to cover
mm,
the cost of living.
mm,
Whereas we used to be able to, oh, so cute, in the 50s and 60s, one parent could work and the other
mm,
one could stay at home. In those days, it was usually the mother, can stay at home with the
mhm,
kids, right? Who
mhm.
does that anymore, right? That's
What is
because
that
of
mark on your
inflation.
top? By the way, there's a mark on your top
I
doing
know,
my
right?
head
I
in.
think it's a stain, dude. You're not meant to notice that. I think that's just a
Yeah,
stain.
but if I notice, everyone else is going to notice it. So now we've had it out in the open.
Yeah, I know.
We've
It's
talked
been
about
discussed.
so we were up to
Yeah,
CPI and inflation, and how if you put $100 a month away, and at the end of a year you've got 1,200, and then the end of 10 years you've got whatever that amount was, numbers, and but that 48,000 will not have
at
any
the end of
worth,
40
and
years.
that
But it doesn't buy
and there's
anything, right? It doesn't buy
doesn't
a
buy anything.
house.
Like,
It doesn't
yes,
buy, like, your kids inherit it and they go,
in the
what am I
old
going to do
days you
with
could
this
have put that down
48,000?
for
It
a
doesn't buy
deposit.
anything, right?
Yeah, you could
It's
have
like
put
a
that down
hundred
for a
bucks today.
deposit.
Do you
You
remember when
can't
a
now.
hundred bucks? Do you remember when a hundred
I
bucks
know.
was a lot of money?
I know. Now it's like $10. It's a meal. That's it, in
Okay,
a
yeah,
cafe.
that's right. I know. That is the issue right there. And so, okay, so it all goes up, but we all just like, it's like we're just swimming in water, and you ask a fish, what's water? And they go, what are you talking about? Like, if you spoke to a caveman about what's air, what's oxygen, yeah, like it's
Exactly.
meaningless, right? So inflation is just that. Like no one thinks about it. Nobody knows what it is. Nobody considers it. It's like it's just not an issue. Okay, now let's just take it to the next step and let's get like real. Like, okay, I'm about to get serious. You ready? This is me being
Yeah, I'm ready.
serious. This is my
I,
serious
I
face. We good?
no, you're gonna make me laugh. Don't. I can't. Just see you. I'll get the giggles, and we know what happens then. There's no coming back. Just okay,
We never do
I'm
serious.
serious.
What is this, right? Okay.
I know.
Getting serious. So here's how it goes, all right? Now, okay, you work for a living, you make money. Now, you made a comment to me recently, and this triggered a line of thought, okay? You said, I've just made all this money recently, and I've now got to pay my tax, and that's going to wipe out everything I've earned, right?
Yep,
All right,
100%.
let's talk about that. So let's talk about taxes in our society for a moment. So here goes taxes. First of all, there's your income tax. Okay. All right. Whatever that is. In my case, I've got my own business. So that's 30%. I can basically do most of that through, I can balance my income such that what my income and my company tax is roughly the same. I can make that work, right? So let's just say that's 30% on average. It's higher for high income earners and it's lower for lower income earners, but 30% is an average in Australia. Okay, so now let's add some taxes. We've got capital gains tax. So if you buy, sorry, this is top of mind for me as we speak. If you buy an asset, so that's an investment property, shares, gold.
You're frozen.
Oh, you've frozen too. You there?
There we are. We're back.
Oh,
We're
we're
back.
back, we're back, we're back. Okay, so I started with capital gains tax. So if you buy an investment property, this is for more top end people, shares, people with investments, gold, all right, all of that. You buy it at this
And
price, you sell it at that price.
And let me say, because if I'm about to consider Airbnb my house, and so when I sell it, I then have to pay capital gains tax on my house for the nights that people were paying to stay in my home, not for the whole duration, but
Right.
for the night. So if I say, a month, you know, 28 days out of a year, then I have to pay capital gains tax on the 28 days of the year of each year for the purchase of the house or for the sale of the house.
Of course you do.
I just found that out.
Unless, of course, it's cash, like unless you find a way around it, right? But, and I'm just going to bring in a slight tangent here. If they bring in central bank digital currencies and there is no such thing as cash, now, now there's no cash transactions. There's no going to the market and buying my meat, my fresh vegetables from the market in cash, right? And they can't earn that cash tax-free. Not that anyone gets anything tax-free. Okay, so there's that, right? So let's leave aside where it's going in the future. Let's just talk where it is today. So you've got that tax on your Airbnb if you rent out, or if you Airbnb part of your home, like a room in your home. So there's taxes on capital gains tax. There's GST. So in the UK, that's VAT, yeah, right, and around Europe.
Yeah,
okay.
Value added tax is what that stands for.
Spot on. Very nice. I don't know what it is in Australia. What's GST stand for?
General Services.
Really?
Tax. General Services.
I never knew that.
Do you know what? I'm going to Google it. Sorry.
Yeah, Google. All right.
Everyone can just hold while we just do that. You can carry on. I can do two things at one time.
I'm going to carry on. I'm just going to carry on because that's my name. I carry on.
Carry on. That's really good. It's really good for you.
Carry on.
Oh no, it's not. It's goods and services tax.
Goods and services. That's right. That's what it is. Goods and services.
What did I say? I said general services tax. Did I say that? Right.
Close enough. Okay. So we've got all these taxes, right? So if you counted, if you just started from 30% income tax and then you add GST, that's 10% on everything that you buy. Then you add capital gains tax. Then you add, if you're in a business, payroll tax and all sorts of taxes that are involved there and kind of profit, whatever profits you make and everything. Like the government grabs everything, death taxes, inheritance taxes. I don't know that.
Inheritance tax, yeah, it's shocking. I've just found out about inheritance tax. I know, it's appalling.
I don't think we do that in Australia. I think that's UK actually. I think Australia is one of the few places that doesn't do that. But anyway, so there's taxes coming out. There's rates, not just taxes. Like if we talk about council rates, right? And then you've got if you're renting out a place, there's body corporate rates. There's it doesn't stop, right? Okay, so let's assume as a bare minimum, probably 50-60% of all the money that you're making that hasn't changed very much from one year to the next is taxed overall, if you include all those taxes along the way, at probably 60%, right? Now, a slave, by definition, is someone who gives 100% of their time and all their profit goes to the cotton farm owner, right? Okay. So if you are working, if you're spending your time, 60%, right, is going to the government. So in effect, you are 60% a slave. That means 60% of your life, of your time, of the time you are spending working, right, of 12 months, 50% is 6 months, 60% is about getting close to 7 months of your life is paying government, right? Now let's talk about the other. Go.
I'll just give you that quick example. Today I got an invoice and it looked like this amount. And once again, I took the 35%, 40% out. It's tiny. I just think, what is the point? All those hours of working to only get the bare minimum of it, really. Once again, it gives me the shits. It's disconcerting. It's demoralizing.
I assume there's no, and there's an argument for a welfare state and defense. I'm big on defense, I believe there should be some going towards defense. I think some money should be going towards welfare, nowhere near what we're spending in Australia. Some money should go towards a public service, but it's enormous and it's ever growing. It never decreases, it always increases. So a certain amount of our money is going towards people who don't actually produce anything. They don't create anything. They don't, anyway, that's another whole discussion. Let's not go there. But so now 60%, right? Let's say 60%. And I think that's being kind, to be honest. But let's say 60% of your income, and if you're higher income earner, then it's greater than that, is going to government. So that's 7 months of your time per year, right? Now, on what's left, you're saving $100 a month, let's say. And now we're back to the inflation issue, right? Which is that now, by creating inflation, and the government creates inflation as well, they are stealing another 2% per year, 7% per year, compounded. And of your 40% that's left, they are, and I'm not kidding, they are stealing. They are taking away the purchasing power of what you had left over to look after your life and create some savings for yourself, for your retirement, for your kids. Right? Okay. So that brings up the question, how is government creating inflation? Surely that's just a function of supply and demand in a capitalist world. And the answer to that is absolutely not. 100% government creates inflation to steal more purchasing power for you and give it to them. And the way that works is technology fundamentally brings prices down. Okay, so if I've got, we're back to I dropped it, the phone, right? Okay, here's the phone where I can send my Bitcoin to your Bitcoin, but here's the phone that has come down in price because of technology over the course of 10 years. Now that should be the same for food, for housing. House prices should be coming down because of the technology involved in making bricks. The way we make bricks is cheaper because we've got better technology and better machines that make bricks quicker and faster and cheaper, right? Everything trends towards lower prices because technology advances. So housing should be cheaper. Petrol is pulled out of the ground more efficiently. That price should actually be coming down, not going up. Commodities are a little bit more supply and demand, but anything that's got a man-made, and oil has certainly got a man-made element because we've got to get it out of the ground. So because technology is ever advancing and making things cheaper, our prices should be coming down. Why are they going up then? The reason they're going up is because the government is in such huge debt. They spend more than they have coming in via taxes, despite the fact that we're in effect giving them 60-70% of our money, right?
What are they spending it on?
They're spending it on, first of all, they're in so much debt over 80 years.
They're already on the back burner.
They're spending it just on debt payments a lot of the time, to be honest, interest payments on their debt. And then they're spending it on a lot of welfare. They're spending it on themselves, the public service that's ever expanding. I mean, have you had anything to do with anyone who works for, say, NDIS or any public service, anyone who's worked in private industry originally and moved into public service? Have you? And the first thing they always say is, oh my God, there is so much waste. Right? I worked for public service once. And you ways. Do you know what happened in June every year in the lead up to the end of financial year? People would find get rid of. You reckon that happens in private industry?
No.
Not on your life.
Same with funded bodies, same with funded organisations. Before June, we'd suddenly find all this money that we had to spend, otherwise we wouldn't get funded for the next year.
That's right. I remember that because I worked for ABC Radio. And so I watched that happen as well, right? So that's where
Mm,
the money goes. The money goes in
mm.
wastage. It goes in June parties. We did special Christmas and June parties, you know, like what, so that we still get the same budget for next year, right?
And it's the same with the roadworks. You always notice, and I remember saying this to my children, and suddenly every year they notice it, around March through to June, there is so many roadworks because they've got all this money that they haven't used through the year and they have to use it. So they suddenly, the roadworks, or you watch, and anyone in Australia or anywhere else, maybe if it works the same way, you watch from March now through to June, the roads are just ridiculous with roadworks, and then it's quiet for another 8, 9 months.
I have not noticed that phenomenon, and you are
Well,
probably
go.
absolutely right.
I'm 100% right. I'm always right, Karen.
You're
I should know
always
this.
right. I know. Like, and I've noticed that over 20 years. Like, you're always right. Goes without saying.
Thank you. I appreciate the acknowledgement.
The acknowledgement. I know you deserve the validation, and you need, yeah, I know. You need to be validated.
But on this one, I need you because I have no clue, and you do. You're a wealth of information.
Another way of putting that is she doesn't shut up. When is she going to shut up? Okay, right?
No, it's not. It's keep going, is what I want to say, because I'm enthralled and I'm actually understanding. I don't know how it's going to come to be about
Going to come to
Bitcoin,
yeah,
but I'm with you on the journey.
right. I know, right? So we haven't got to the Bitcoin bit yet, but that's the thing. You can't get to the Bitcoin bit yet because you got to get that like context of why is it
Yeah.
valuable. What you got to figure out what's the problem before you start talking about the solution, right? And I think, we're doing
we've really done that well.
right? The various problems. Oh, did you freeze? I froze. You froze. Did we both?
Yeah,
freeze?
you just froze for a second though. You could have just taken a breath and it wouldn't have been noticed.
I could have, yeah, but I don't breathe.
Unlike the stain on your shirt.
When I'm talking, we don't breathe. There's no breathing. Like there's just talking, right?
That's it. That's it. Keep going. Keep going. I'm right there 100%. I really am. I feel like I've kind of, my brain hurts a little bit, but I'm kind of piecing together where we're up to with the realization of how much is taken from us. It is,
Right.
and how much money there is that's wasted.
That's,
and I know that from
experience. That's it. That's what I'm trying to get to. Is like, first of all, it's all taken from us, and the little bit that's left over, it's taken from it. Okay, so we're saying technology should be bringing prices down, right? But A, there's wastage, right? And B, they're printing money to cover their debts, to pay us through COVID, right? And I'm enormously grateful for being paid through COVID because they screwed over my business of 28 years now. And if they hadn't paid me during that time, I would have been stuffed, and now I'm stuffed anyway, and I'm trying to find another way, and blah, 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 blah. Leaving aside my story, the fact is that they printed money. They printed money. They didn't have it. It's not like they had surplus and let's spend our savings, right? They went into more debt. How do they create more debt? What they do is they issue something called treasury bonds. All right. Okay. I'm just going to try and explain that a little bit. So they issue treasury bonds for another country to buy, and they pay that country interest. So let's say China buys, I mean, some people in Australia will buy our treasury bonds as well, like big institutions, financial institutions. So they buy the treasury bonds, right? Knowing that they're going to get 1% or 2% interest per year and that it will be paid back at the end. All right. So they've issued that debt, but they've issued so much debt over the last 50 years that the 1%, 2% payments, and in previous cases much higher than that, is enormous. So they print money to cover it. And the way print money works is that, now I'm really conscious of the stain on my damn t-shirt.
I can't see it anymore now.
No,
I've been letting you know.
disappeared. I just pulled it down.
Gone.
It's gone. It's
Very
gone.
good.
I just asked it.
But you don't have to sit like a robot guarding
right,
the stain.
To cover it,
Use
to cover
your
it.
Yeah,
Right.
don't do that.
No.
Because I can't deal with the fact that you're not using your hands as you normally do. So
I know.
carry on.
I know.
Yeah,
I'm a handsy
that's better.
person. It happens. It happens. So like my Dad tried to stop me recently. I was in full flow in Sydney. I was talking about something and my hands were going, and he did this and he grasped my hands and he grabbed them and he said, keep talking. And I went,
I know.
I couldn't, it doesn't.
Yeah. What a good exercise. That's
I
an
know,
interesting exercise.
doesn't work.
I love
Anyway,
it.
so where are we? So how do they do it these days? They add zeros digitally onto their debt. That's it. And they circulate more cash in the economy to me to pay for my business during lockdown, to everyone who had a small business during lockdown. And I took it. Thank you very much. You're going to take my business away from me. You can take it, right? You can pay for it, I should say. So, and you could say there's a level of hypocrisy there, but with the amount of taxes I've paid them over the years, I've got no qualms. I've got no problem taking that,
You
because
weren't making any money, Carolyn. It's not like you were sitting there flush going, give me more. You weren't, it was compensating for the loss. So I don't think that there is any hypocrisy there at all.
except to the degree that I just like having government. But you're absolutely right. If they hadn't taken my business away, I wouldn't have needed compensating. But
ever, and you would never seek it.
Okay, so let's just do this for a moment. So now, if I think I've had this conversation with you before, or maybe I had it with my friend Kelly, who's also maybe going to come on this podcast at some stage. So if I've got an apple and my friend has got, and you've got oranges, right? I've got one apple and there's one apple and everybody in the street wants that apple, right? I'm the only one with an apple in my backyard. I've got an apple tree, right? And you all come around and you've all got oranges. And I'm like, God, I've got more oranges than I know what to do with, man. And I'm thinking, oh, maybe I could make an orange cake. I could make some orange juice. What else am I going to do with the oranges, right? And you're all coming around trying to buy the apple, right? And so you go, here, I'll give you 10 oranges. And the next door neighbor says, I'll give you 12. And the next one says, I'll give you 15, right? So I'll take the 15, right? Because I've only got one apple. I'll take the 15. I can do stuff with that, right? Okay. So I've now got 15 oranges. Okay. But if I've got 100 apples and everybody's got 100 apples on their own apple tree in the backyard, how much is that worth in terms of oranges?
Nothing.
Nothing. Like, oh, I can just pick my own apples. Thank you very much. Okay, right. So same with when the government issues debt and creates dollars circulating in the system. They create dollars. Now, if you give everybody in the street $1 million, right? Okay, so now I put my house up for sale and everybody in the street wants my house, but they've all got, so before it was going to go for $100,000. Now, everybody's been given an extra $1 million and they're all bidding against each other. How much does my house go for?
Nothing. 100,000 that you had to begin with.
Does it?
Which isn't worth anything.
But they've all got an extra $1 million. So maybe one of them thinks, oh, maybe I'll spend a bit more than 100,000 because I've got an extra $1 million. I'll maybe pay 200,000. And the next one goes,
okay, so
I've got an extra $1 million. I'll pay 300,000.
So you go to the highest bidder.
It goes to the highest bidder, right? So now their purchasing power for $100,000, what was $100,000, because an extra $1 million, they've each got an extra $1 million. In effect, they're not $1 million richer because they're all now bidding for my house, and the house simply goes for $1,100,000. Because everyone's got the $1 million to spend on it. Does that make sense?
So you've only made 100 grand on it. You've not really made anything on it.
Exactly what I was going to make in the first place, right? It hasn't changed anything. And you're no richer for having the extra $1 million. All it's done is reduce the purchasing power. It's basically said, let's just give everyone an apple tree. Yeah.
So I know that.
And now you're out with bugger all. Yeah, sorry, go on.
No, it's okay. So I know for myself, my house was bought at a certain price and then it went up exponentially, like, I mean, ridiculous amounts.
You also chose a
And
very
so
good
then I
area, probably unbeknownst to you
no,
at the time.
what's that?
It's
What
like
was
it's a
that?
really good area.
Right, so it's gone up ridiculous. And when I got told, yeah, you could get this for it, I thought, oh my gosh. So I then looked at selling, and then I looked at buying even something smaller by the ocean. I can't get anything like this anywhere else. And this isn't spectacular. Do you know what I mean? So it's like,
Yeah.
I'm not making anything more than if it was sold at the price that I bought it at all those years ago. It's now, because of that inflation, everybody's got that extra million to just pay out for a property, where before people had to really fight for that. And therefore me selling it won't make any difference, because I'm not going to get anything better than what I have now anyway, with the money, the extra money that I might get for this house, if that makes any sense.
Exactly. It makes absolute sense. That's the point. That's it. That's it. That's right. Right there. Hit the nail on
I'm
the head.
just plugging myself in.
Are you? It's best to
Yes.
be plugged in, I find.
Well, if you don't plug in, but if you
Yeah.
do plug in, it tells you you've been plugged in for too long. I think that's like a bit like my life. And then it tells you to unplug for a while, and then it tells you to replug because you're running out of power.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
is a bit of a metaphor. Oopsie.
Yeah.
It is a bit of a metaphor. So hang on, let me just plug myself in and I'll be right with you. It's all about technology and being in the moment, isn't it? Working
Being
with
in
what
the
we have.
moment,
There we go.
technology, going with the flow. I
That's
think we've
it.
got a
We're
whole
back.
bunch of life lessons right here in this moment, right? I know.
100%.
You could
All
just.
right. So where are we up to?
So where are we up
How
to?
is Bitcoin
Okay.
going to work for
So
me?
are you kind of getting there? I'm very conscious that my hair looks very flat. So now
Oh,
I'm
your
running
hair looks
the same
beautiful. My
end
hair
of
looks
my hair, right?
my hair looks mental. Like I'm proper just got out of bed or something.
No, your
Oh
hair
my
looks
God.
beautiful, darling.
Now my cat's coming in for a little play. I've got to shut the
Don't
door
start
though.
on the cats. Can we not be talking about
Oh,
cats? All right. That's
can
a
you hear him?
discussion for another time. You and I talking cats another time, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So where we're at is this. They're taking away 60 or 70% of your money through taxes. You're laughing at me now.
Sorry.
Right?
Can you
And
hear
we're
the
trying to
cat?
be serious. Are we serious? Are we going to be serious, right?
Can
I
you
mean,
hear the cat?
this is serious, right? Yeah, that's it. Lock her out. Him.
I, I couldn't just talk, could I? No. Then I'd have to show that I've got pajamas on or something, like in the
Oh.
old days of COVID. No, I haven't. Okay. Remember those Zooms during COVID where people had all sorts of weird clothing on? Right, carry
Okay,
on.
so where
Sorry.
we're at is we've got 60 to 70% tax. Then on the 40% that's left, they're printing money and debasing the money. What they're doing is they're just giving everybody in the street $1 million, right? They're just like spraying it, like just spraying money around. Doesn't do anything except debase the money and make everything else more expensive, because we're all betting, because the goods are limited, the property is limited, and now the money is almost unlimited, right? There's more money than goods and services, so everything goes up in price. So inflation is not a function of supply and demand, because if it was just supply and demand, the cost of goods would be coming down, right? And the demand would be the same for the computers and for the sofas and for the computers, right? Did I already say computers?
You did, but that's okay.
I'm just looking around and the plants,
The
right?
things.
And the
The
pictures.
things.
Yeah, the things, right? So, okay. So now what they're doing is, on the 40% that's left, is they are stealing your purchasing power. They are stealing. They could just walk into your house, right? And steal your money and go, it's the same as, like, if goods stayed the same, but they took away some of your money, if the price stayed the same and they took away your money, same. But actually they leave you with the same amount of money, and they put the goods and services up by just spraying money into the system, which comes in via the banks first and then gets spread out to everybody else. and the lowest people get the least amount, but they get a bit, you know. And so now, so that's inflation. So now, so that's how much we can. Oh, we haven't talked about Bitcoin. We need to come back to Bitcoin. You told me to talk about Bitcoin, right? Okay, that was the point. That's why we're here, right?
It is. You're cluey. You've got this.
All right, I got this. I may have just, diverted. I do that.
But is there a point to it though? Obviously, there would be a point to all the diversion and the stuff that we've talked
Yeah,
about. Is that not correct?
okay? Thank you
Yeah.
for putting me back on track. See,
Otherwise, it really is just a rant.
this is why I love you, because there is a point to the rant. And if you hadn't brought me back then, I wouldn't have gone there. So, all right. So what's the deal? Imagine if two things. I'm just going to say two. There's actually much more to it than that. Imagine that money was limited. They couldn't print anymore. Imagine if they couldn't print anymore. Therefore, the price of goods, including houses, came down over time instead of going up. So now, when you save that 40%, leave aside the tax issue. They can still have their 60%, whatever. Imagine with the 40% you've got left, the 1,200 you're saving a year, the 48,000 per 40 years we came up with. Imagine that the price of housing came down and you went, okay, for the money that I'm saving, if I sit on that and I keep saving, in 3, 4, 5 years, maybe 10 years, with the price of housing coming down and my savings going up, and let's just put yourself in the shoes of your kids at the moment, imagine I will be able to save for a house. Instead of I'm saving, but the price of housing is going up faster than I can save.
100%.
I'm never going to be able to afford it, right?
No.
Okay, so here's the deal with Bitcoin. If it was either an alternative or a parallel currency, so a currency that it either takes over from Australian dollars, which I can't see happening, or is parallel to, so it's a second, we could buy my house in Australian dollars or I can buy it in Bitcoin. But Bitcoin's doing two things. One is it can't be printed any more than the 21 million that are going to be printed. That's it, maximum limit, right? 21 million. Each Bitcoin
says who?
Sorry, says the
who?
So it was released in 2009. The first block was printed in 2009, 3rd of January. We've just gone past the anniversary. And that's it. Nobody can touch it ever since. It is literally just a program. Like Bitcoiners are going to pick me up for getting this all wrong in the way that I explain this, but I'm trying to explain it A, in a way that I can understand it, and B, that other people can understand it. So it's a program that was released like toothpaste out of a tube and you can't get it back in, and nobody can change it. Nobody can change it, right? You need more than 50% of nodes, like miners and like people who are just keeping the blockchain running day in and day out, to agree to make any more, and that's just never going to happen. So says the original program released by Satoshi Nakamoto, some anonymous being, back on the 3rd of January 2009, right? And it will never be more than 21 million. So there's no government who can print more, who can debase your purchasing power. So I'm feeling tired. You must be feeling exhausted from just listening to this, right? So
yeah.
Okay. So in effect, I'm going to try and keep this short because I think the issue is more about understanding the problem than focusing on the solution. But the solution is, if you've got a currency that in effect can't, I mean, you may still be taxed. I don't know what the tax implications are, to be honest. I don't know what's going to happen with tax. But if the 40% that you get to save can maintain its purchasing, not only maintain, but increase its purchasing power, because as long as something is scarce, like my apple, it's going to increase in value. I'm going to get more and more.
So Bitcoin is like the apple
Bitcoin is the apple,
because
right?
it's finite, because it ends after 21 million.
Spot on. Yes,
Right.
that's it. That's it.
Okay.
And it's which is exactly what gold was for 5,000 years, right? But it's a little bit better than gold because before they created fiat and just started printing paper, right? But it's a bit better than gold because I can send it to my mate overseas really easily, really instant. I can send it to you in New South Wales. I go, let me just send you $5 of Bitcoin, right? From my phone to your phone in a way that I can't do with gold, in a way that I could send it from my bank to your bank, but then we've got bank fees. And then what if the bank freezes your money, which is what they did with the Canadian truck drivers? The Canadian truck drivers went, we don't agree with what the government is doing right now. We're going to create a protest. They did that. And the government froze their money in their bank accounts. You cannot get your money out of your bank.
Oh my gosh.
And
That's
so you can't do that.
appalling.
You can't do it. So it's unconfiscatable. I can't say that correctly. It's unconfiscatable, right? It's unfreezable. It's between you and me. There's no third party. The government can't touch it. The banks can't touch it. The banks and the government combined can't touch it. The government can't tell the bank to freeze your money because they disagree with your point of view on something. And so, and because it's limited, and because it's being used, there's like 2 million Bitcoin wallet holders across the world who can all transact with each other. Now, that's not much because there's 8 billion people on the planet, but it's growing and people are getting it bottom up, right? Starting with, El Salvador and Nigeria and, all the people we talked about before in authoritarian and Venezuela with their runaway inflation, all of them get it, right? They get the value of it. Then you get like middle American class in the West going, all right, this is something that could hold its purchasing power and that I can swap with my neighbor. Yeah, it's not quite bartering, but it's outside of banks and government and everybody else just being able to say, like PayPal recently, right? So they said, we disagree with your point of view about your crowdfunding. We're freezing your account.
No.
Because we don't agree with the cause that you're crowdfunding for.
Oh my gosh.
So they can pick and choose who gets to keep their money, who gets to transact with their money according to their political point of view. And I don't care what your political point of view is. I don't care if you're left or right. Can you imagine if there's if Donald Trump and anyone from Republicans are in power, right? And you want to give your money to Greenpeace. And they go, we don't agree with that. We're going to freeze your money.
I can't even.
You can't even. That's the most famous expression in our household from you. I can't even. I can't
even. I mean, I just can't even.
If they've got a central bank digital currency, right? Which means that they can follow everything that you buy, that book in the background, that certificate you paid for. They go, we don't want you studying that. We want you studying this. We don't want you to buy that book. We want you to buy this. And we can freeze your account the moment you disagree with what we want you to pay for.
That's shocking. So that's just like Big Brother, isn't it? Just complete control.
Right? I know. That's what the Bitcoin community are concerned about. And it doesn't mean you've got to go and sell the house and buy Bitcoin. It means put 1% of your savings in Bitcoin, right? Just buy $20 worth. Just like that's it. Right? Don't
start. So it's like
Start
starting to accrue.
something. And
So
it's like
then,
an insurance policy. Think of it like insurance against the worst case scenario of governments issuing central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, and the worst case scenario is they start telling you what you can and can't buy. They can freeze
yeah.
your bank account at will. It's just insurance against that. Just a little
Okay.
bit of money put aside just as an insurance policy against that. But not only that, like was it Jeff or John, the father, right? And he's going, I reckon, leave it 20, 30, 40 years because it's a limited resource. I reckon it will increase in value over time because, like gold, people are going to want it. They're going to want to
Will
transact.
they run out? Or will that
Could it
21
run out?
million
Okay,
always
that's a
be
really
active?
good question, actually. So there's someone called Michael Saylor, who you may or may not have heard of, who owns a lot of Bitcoin, right? He runs a fund called the Grayscale something, something, something. And he owns a lot of Bitcoin. I think he's the biggest Bitcoin owner in the world outside of Satoshi Nakamoto, who's disappeared off the face of the earth. And we don't know whatever happened to him, Dave,
Wow.
whatever. And so could it pool into certain big hands? Yes. And that only makes the value of it greater unless they dump it onto the market, right? Like the government is currently doing with cash. They could dump it onto the market. That's a risk. I agree.
And then you lose any wealth from it because it doesn't have any meaning to it.
That's right. Well, no, because it's still, if people buy it up, it doesn't become meaningless. It just means, see, at the moment, if the government dumps treasury bonds onto the market, it's meaningless because they could just dump more and more and more. Michael Saylor can only dump what he's got. And that's it. And at some point, people will buy
And
all.
like anybody else.
And
So if I was, so how would it look then? Where would I, like say, okay, I'm just a normal person and I make a living and I have this much income per month. How do you buy it and what do you do with it? And what happens with it? Like, how do what would it even mean for me?
okay. So it's a little bit like buying gold. Yeah. So if you were to buy physical gold rather than certificated gold, you would go to a gold broker and you'd go and buy gold, or maybe you've got a gold jewelry. Have you got a gold necklace? Gold, yeah, gold bracelet or something, gold earrings. Ooh, baby.
Yeah. Diamonds, actually, baby, and sapphires. And
As one
opals.
does. I love opals, actually. I really like opals.
Yeah, me too.
I've come around on opals. They used to be a bit too common for me, but they're pretty. They're just lovely. Anyway, so, okay, so you've got gold and you could go, one day I think that's going to be worth a fortune. And I can't always wear it on my bracelet, on my wrist, let's say, because sometimes I don't want to wear that. So I've got to put it somewhere. I've got to put it in storage, right? I've got to either keep it in my house, but someone could like steal it from my house. So I might put it, because I think it's particularly my diamond tiara and my fabulous diamond, necklace.
Of course, yes.
I think I'm just going to put them in like a safe in the city. I'm going to pay $300 a year storage, and I'm just going to keep them in a safe. Okay. So with Bitcoin, what you do is the same as gold. You buy a little bit and you put it on, I haven't got my ledger here, it looks like a USB stick. And you put your little bit of Bitcoin on there, $20. But you stick it under your mattress or wherever you want to hide it in your house or in your car, but it's the size of a USB stick, right? You bury it in your garden and nobody can ever touch that $20 worth of Bitcoin. And the price of Bitcoin versus US dollars is likely, and I'm wary of going too far into the value versus US dollars, because why should US dollars actually even be the gauge? But if it's a Bitcoin standard world, but if you're going to measure it against US dollars or Australian dollars, then if that $20, because it's a limited supply versus Aussie dollars, which is unlimited supply because the government can print more at any point in time, if that $20 becomes $2,000 or $20,000 or $200,000 or $2 million, right, worth of Bitcoin, nobody can freeze your account. Nobody can steal it from you. Because even if they found the ledger, the wallet, the hard wallet, hidden in your car or your garage or your bookshelf or wherever it is, right? Even if they found it, there's a special seed phrase, like a series of words that you will have memorized. 12 words. 12 words. You memorize 12 words. What are they going to do? Like, they cannot access that ledger, that hard wallet, whichever
Will
one.
they try?
I don't know. Like,
So
they
what
can
do we
come
do with it
around
then?
and torture everyone with a Bitcoin wallet in the whole of Australia and tie us to our seats and, you know, break our balls. Like, I don't know, but it seems unlikely. They've been able to confiscate gold in the past. They've done that. They can confiscate money in the
So,
bank. They've done that. But I think it's a big deal to confiscate our Bitcoin. It's hard.
so it's an investment then. You buy it and you keep it on your USB on a ledger, and then what? You just keep it and hope it grows because it's so finite and it's so limited rather. So it's limited, so therefore it grows in wealth like the apple.
In purchasing
And
power,
then
yes. Like the apple, spot on, that never rots.
And then what can you do with it once it's
That,
gone to say
now you can buy more stuff with
$20?
it. Could have done. So now the house, so you saved $48,000 over 40 years, right? But the house has now gone up to $480,000 or $4.8 million. It's increased in value, in purchasing price, faster than your savings and the value of your savings. Whereas Bitcoin, because it's limited supply and because you've got 8 billion people on the planet at the moment, all potentially wanting a bit of Bitcoin because I can trade more freely with it. I can transact with my family more freely with it because it's limited, because the government can't inflate it, because it's just out of the bank's hands. For all of those reasons, it makes it attractive. And so now it
Who
makes
holds it
it
all?
more and more valuable. You, me, anyone who holds it. Nobody holds it except the people who hold it. There's nobody who holds it except the people who hold it. Nobody manages it. Nobody distributes it. The program, I'm going to call it the program for want of a better word, the protocol, the original program that was put out there, and that's it. And then after 21 million, that's it. It cuts off. End of story.
It's huge, isn't it?
Come back to Jeff the Son. What were the questions?
Yes.
Okay. Can we remember any of those?
What if the internet crashes?
I took a mental note and then I completely forgot, right?
So it was to do with the internet crashing, and it was to do with the internet crashing. What if the internet goes down and then you've lost everything because it's all on the internet?
Yeah, there was something else around that too. But I mean, I think you gave the correct answer to that to begin with. Well, if the internet goes down, if you go to the bank to get your money out now, like if you go to the physical bank, first of all, the bank has been closed. My local branch has been closed for the last week and a half because we're on holidays. So there's that.
And the other thing is, everything that we do through banking now is online anyway. So if the internet does go down, we're all screwed because everything we do is online. Very rarely do I do physical transactions with money.
Precisely. And if we do all go into well, and then there's all the credit cards, because that's all online. So now you can't buy anything in the supermarket with your credit card. So you've got to have cash. So you've got to go to the bank to get cash out. And so now you go to the bank and either it's closed or they just go, sorry, too many people are asking for cash at the moment. We haven't got yours, because the amount that they lend out versus the amount that they actually physically hold is like, there's nothing. They don't keep stuff in reserve anymore. Or maximum they would keep as maybe 10%, right? So if 100% of us go looking for cash and they've only got 10% of our savings actually in cash in the bank at best, then we can get 10% of our money out at best at that time when we need it.
Okay, so I can buy Bitcoin and you would tell me how to do that and keep it and maybe keep putting a little bit of money away and convert it almost into Bitcoin by buying it. And then you can buy things with it for the amount that it's worth. So, you know, you bought it for 20 and it's now gone up to 200 over a couple of weeks or something. You can now purchase something for 200 because your Bitcoin from $20 is now worth 200.
Correct. And people
so long as who you're purchasing off uses Bitcoin as a currency.
Yeah. And that's where there is an element of network effect. So because El Salvador are 100% on Bitcoin, yeah, as the father John talked about,
yeah.
Right? So, and I can buy a whole bunch of goods online. Like if you go online and look for stuff you can buy with Bitcoin, you'll find stores that include.
Oh, I want to go and do that now.
Price as well as the Bitcoin price. What's that?
I want to go and do that now. I want to go and find out, as if I had Bitcoin, what could I get with it? Who could I buy from, and what can I buy? I'm interested in Australia in particular, obviously.
Look, I needed to sell an investment unit recently, and I didn't end up doing it because there was a whole problem, which I think I talked about with you, about the title, and it's so complicated. No lawyer has come across this issue before. So anyway, so I'm stuck with it and I've re-rented it out for the time being, until we sort out this legal issue. But there's people selling their houses. I would happily sell that unit for Bitcoin. Happily. I would love. So there are people, so I told you about, and you started talking about it earlier, a guy overseas who I'm about to interview on Sunday evening our time. And he has remortgaged his property to buy more Bitcoin. So there are hardcore believers.
Is he going to tell you that?
Sorry? He told me
to be talking about that.
Our conversation we had that was going to be our original interview, but his Wi-Fi wasn't working very well. So we said he's getting it fixed up this week. So that's why we Sunday. So he told me in that half hour that we did talk. And I'm like, wow, they're like people believe in this, right? So you go, okay, then maybe it's just a religion, maybe it's just a Ponzi scheme, but people believe in it for good reason, for the stuff that we've just already talked about. And if you say, oh, but it's only then a religion, then it's just like tulip mania. Well, so's a whole bunch of stuff in politics at the moment, to be honest. They're just
true.
When people believe in stuff, they believe in stuff. So even if it was only that, and it's not, because there's so much more to it, because it's backed by a program, because it's backed by the limited supply, because you can transact with it, because there's an entire network building on top of it by way of something called the Lightning Network that allows you to transact with it more and more easily, because Jack Mallers, God love him, sexy man, I can't look up Jack Mallers online, I can't.
He won't be watching this, will he?
No, Jack Mallers won't be seeing this. I can guarantee you that. But anyway,
Jack Mallers,
he was the one. Not only did he work with the El Salvador government to bring Bitcoin into El Salvador as legal tender, but he's brought it into Macy's, Walmart, McDonald's, Wendy's, like KFC. I don't know, like all the big chains in America now take Bitcoin. because of Jack Mallows.
Wow. So
Right?
then if it's not Bitcoin,
It's very hard to get the toothpaste back in the toothpaste tube.
yeah,
Right.
true. If it's if it's not then Bitcoin, it can be another currency like Ethereum or whatever other. I don't know. I just heard that
You
word.
ask really smart questions. Like for someone who knows nothing about this space, like it's a really good question. Absolutely. Right. So
I got to put my hair back. My hair's doing my head in.
right,
I've just got
okay.
to put it because
Yeah,
it's gone into a flop.
Go.
Like
Yeah,
I literally
having flippy.
if I was to leave it, that's what it would look like. So I've
Right.
got to keep
Okay.
pulling it back off my
Very
face.
sexy when it does that. There we go. Oh, nice.
So that,
I'm liking that look.
no, not really.
No? Here we go. Oh, there it
That's
is.
got to do.
There we go. Ooh.
Ah, I can see. I have eyes.
I see the light.
Okay.
Perfect for this point in the conversation. So, where were we?
So Ethereum, and would there be other
Ethereum,
currencies
right.
then, like Bitcoin?
Okay. So, I just need to differentiate. And this is where I normally start my conversations with people if I'm chatting with them day to day. There's Bitcoin and there's everything else, right? So there's another 20,000 blockchain projects, none of which provide the same qualities as Bitcoin. None of them are limited supply, decentralized, yeah, have got all those qualities going on. Those two are the main two. Secure is a big issue, right? Because of the way that the blockchain works in Bitcoin to do with the what's called proof of work, that helps to prove a block exists with the transactions that happened on that block. So no other cryptocurrency that I know of brings together decentralization with that level of security around proof of work and limited supply. Yeah, and decentralization matters because all the other projects that I know of, not entirely, actually, there are some other decentralized, but they don't have the other two things, limited supply and that kind of proof of work security. None of them offer all three of those in combination. I'll take those three. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Could something else come up to challenge that? Yes, absolutely. But Bitcoin has got such a big head start in terms of its network. And what I mean by the network is all the nodes, all the miners across the planet, in China, in Eastern Europe, in Texas, in America, in Australia, we've got miners here. There's this huge network of miners. Like if someone's going to come up and challenge Bitcoin, right? And Ethereum would be the closest thing at the moment, but it's just gone from proof of work to proof of stake. So at some level, it doesn't challenge it in the same way in terms of the security factor and the centralization. Like Ethereum has got, I'm going to get his name wrong. How can I get Vitalik Buterin? No. Vitalik Buterin. I may have just got his name wrong. How can I get his name wrong? Anyway, as the head of Ethereum, and they've got like basically a central office. And so none of that exists for Bitcoin. It's different,
Right.
and it moved from proof of work to proof of stake relatively recently. And that's a big deal in terms of the security factor. So
what does that mean? What does
it means, to be honest, I'm not a techie person. I understood it enough to be able to get it in my own head, but not enough to explain it to somebody else. I remember I wasn't enough at the time. If you look up a brilliant man called Guy, he's British. He runs an online thing called an online YouTube podcast called Coin Bureau. You'd really like him. And he explains proof of work versus proof of stake really well. And I think Bitcoin is the only one left that's actually proof of work anymore. That gives the level of security that proof of work does, that I kind of got in my head at the time, and I followed it all through, and I kind of went, oh yeah, I get it. But now if you ask me to explain it to you, I can't do that.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, I've got those things. Okay. All right. Well, I do definitely feel more informed. Really, really informed, actually.
Are you going to buy $20 tomorrow? Am I going to help you
Do you know what?
set up on SwiftX,
Yes.
buy $20? We're going to buy you a ledger and move your $20 of Bitcoin over from SwiftX, the exchange. So you've got to buy it on an exchange, right? And then you move it onto a hard wallet. And then you hide it somewhere in that bookcase behind you or somewhere else, right? But somewhere else, because everyone's heard us talk about the bookcase, right? Don't tell anyone.
Yeah, I would have tidied it up if I knew it was going to be that obvious and there.
I know, you should have used the blur background. It's the thing at the moment. Isn't everyone in your business like using blur backgrounds now? It's like, it seems to be the thing.
I don't care. It's just a bookshelf.
It's just
I don't think there's anything. No, there's nothing particularly telling there other than some books, so it's okay. All right. So yes. So then, would it be the case that you would want your listeners to know how to do the other part, or is that knowledge elsewhere that can be found?
That knowledge is out there. It's a great question to guide the conversation, as you have done every step along the way here.
You're going to help me.
I'm not the geek who's going to help them work through that. It's not hard. Like if I can work it out,
you're going to help me.
I'm going to help you though personally. I'm going to come to you because we missed out on catching up when I came to Sydney recently, and I passed by through Bateman's Bay, and we were going to catch up. You got COVID. No, you didn't. You got a flu. You got a flu.
Yeah,
it didn't end up being
but I thought it was COVID.
Yeah,
I thought
but
it was
either way, like you were too sick to catch up.
Yeah.
Right? So
okay,
so we're going to do that. So I'm going to come. I'm just going to drive up and we're going to buy your Bitcoin, and I'm going to bring a ledger and we're going to put it on a ledger, and you're going to hide it in your garden, right?
Okay, I'm excited.
Yeah.
Except now everyone knows I'm going to come out to my garden one day and it's going to be completely upended because somebody's come to my garden, found me and got my ledger or USB or whatever it's
I know,
called.
but that's because no. But what would have happened in the meanwhile is you would have passed it on to your son and your daughter, and they passed it on to it, and they buried it in their backyard, or maybe they put it. So or maybe the dog ate it, and anything could happen. Anything could happen, right?
Absolutely. All right, that sounds good. It's been great. It's been so interesting, actually.
Really?
I didn't beg out. Yeah, really, truly.
You're amazing. I love that.
Yeah,
I love that you stayed with me. Like, I can't imagine another friend who would have bothered, like, we've just spent, how long have we spent?
2 hours.
2 hours. 2 hours. Normally we spend 2 hours talking absolute rubbish, right? And like, you'd have to say it was constructive 2 hours. Like, we've kind of got somewhere with it. Like,
it was massive. And I feel like anybody watching
we talk about normally isn't valuable. Like, that's valuable stuff.
Yeah, right. 100%. It feels like totally me being a complete novice. I can, at the end of all of this, have a really good understanding about what it is, why it has the wealth that it has, because of the limited
supply
availability of it, limited supply. Thank you. And how it can grow then in wealth, and then how you can use it in terms of trading with it, with the amount that it's valued at that point, which might be different to what you bought it for, depending on, again, the limitations or the capacity, limited supply. So I think that's kind of what I understood. Does that sound like what we've just been talking about? Amazing. Spot on. Totally. 100%. You rock. You're amazing. You never cease to amaze me. Like, I don't think it's so outside of your, like your comfort zone, right? This is not this is not what you do. Money, finance. No, it's not what I do. And you got it. You invested, I got it. Time. I mean, it was exhausting. It was a tiring 2 hours, but you were totally open to it, and you totally got it. And you did it so beautifully in a way that made me, and because you're not fixed and you're not robotic, it's easy to have a laugh, talk about it, talk about the stain on your shirt, talk about my mental hair, and go back to that. That works for me. I can then keep going with it. But if it's being hammered at, I can't. And I think maybe that's a point for others, that just go easy and go gentle. Otherwise, it's just hard for the receiver, especially somebody like me where it's not my forte. I hear numbers and shut right down. I can't even tell, when I'm teaching and I say, right, we'll be back in 20.
Oh, you're freezing. Oh, don't freeze. Not at the end of the conversation here. I've lost you. All right. Well, if that's the case, I'm just gonna, on behalf of Fiona and I, thank God it happened right at the end here. Thank you for listening. If you listened all the way through, my love to everybody out there who's learning about Bitcoin for the first time. Please come on board. It means the world to us, and it's a movement, and it's going to change everything. And it's a beautiful community, and we're all there wanting the best for humanity and for civilization.